got a tip, there's no debate. I know a gent that'll set you straight. It's Vinny Vella time. Good fellow who's got what it takes. A New Yorker to make no mistake. It's Vinny Vella time. And if you're feeling real blue, call on Vinny. He's gonna tell you who's better than you. Elizabeth Street, Little Italy. Hangs with his pals, yeah, that's where he'll be. It's Vinny, a friend of mine. Stand-up guy from the Lower East Side. Take it from me, he's one of a kind. It's Vinny Vella time. Who's better than you?
Good evening and welcome. In case you have not heard, Vinny Vella passed away on February 20th. My name is Scott Skolnick. Rich Speziale and I helped Vinny produce this show every week. Tonight we dedicate the show to celebrating Vinny Vella's magical life. Before we begin, I want to thank Vinny's family for letting us do this. His 5 children, Vinny Vella Jr., Ben and Anthony Hernandez, Jennifer Maloney, and Lauren Vella. A few years ago, some of the best doctors in the world gave Vinny months, but his wife Margaret Ann gave him years. Her love and dedication sustained Vinny through his most difficult days. She gave him hope and strength, and when the time came, she gave him the comfort and support that he needed to achieve his final wish, that he pass at home. For the more than 30 years that they were together, Margaret Ann happily stayed in the background while Vinny got a lot of well-deserved applause. Tonight, I'd like to ask the audience and panel to join me in giving Margaret Ann a round of applause for everything she did for our friend when he needed her the most. Give here. Thank you. And now the Acchords, one of Vinny's favorite groups, will perform to open the show.
On the tropic island.
I'd now like to introduce our panel tonight. I'm going to be very brief with the introductions because we have a lot of people, but a lot of great people. We'll start at the end with Olivia Milano. This was one of Vinny's co-hosts and someone who Vinny was a real mentor to and helped launch her career. And we have Dennis Dell of the Acchords. Dennis is a great friend of Vinny who appeared on the show probably 5 or 6 times by himself and with the group. And he's going to tell us a little bit about Vinny's love for music, which is something he really didn't talk about a lot, but he did have a real love and affection for music, particularly doo-wop music. Our next guest was a friend of Vinny's for over 60 years. In fact, he has the distinction of visiting Vinny in reform school. That's how far back they go. And he's all, well, let me say his name, David Noferi. And the next two were the first and last to be choked to death on The Sopranos, but they're not in order here. We have last and first, Artie Pasquale and Tony Ray Rossi. And John Thomas of JT Talent Enterprises was a great friend and supporter of Vinny. He was a constant source of friendship and a fresh source of talent for this show. And last, but certainly not least, is Monsignor Donald Sakano of Old St. Patrick's Church, who gave really such a wonderful eulogy for Vinny a few weeks ago. And it was because they were friends, besides just a spiritual guidance. I'd just like to start off with Olivia because she worked with Vinny in this studio here, and I
did. Feels good to be back. What's up, guys?
I just want to ask about your memories of working with Vinny on this show, because that's really what brought us all together tonight.
Yeah, definitely. It feels great to be back at the Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Vinny actually inspired me to start my own talk show. And I just feel that he had this ability to connect with people and kind of make people feel comfortable, which is something I want to emulate just in my career, but also in my life. So I will forever miss my good friend Vinny. And I just want to thank him for all the times he just made me laugh. Because if anyone had the ability to put a smile on someone's face, it was Vinny Vella, and he was damn good at it.
You two had a real good chemistry together.
We really did, and it was really a pleasure working with him.
You really did, and I know at one point you did a photo shoot with him for a Christmas magazine or something.
That was fun. Yeah, it was like Santa and his little helper, but he was hilarious the whole time.
That was a fun day. I happened to be there for that. That definitely was.
Yeah, it was great. It was my first magazine spread, and it will be with Vinny Vella. I love it.
Now, let me ask Tony Ray Rossi. Besides being a friend and a fellow actor, you were also Vinny's hairstylist.
Yeah, I cut Vinny's hair for like 1990. Mm-hmm. How many years is that?
That's about 30 years.
30 years. We met. I actually was born right down the block from Vinny, Prince Street, but we didn't know each other. And we came in contact with each other during Donnie Brasco, and we became really close. Mm-hmm. And what could I say about Vinny that hasn't already been said? I mean, he was. I loved him to death. I mean, I felt like his little brother. He would call me up every day and yell at me for not answering the phone. Throw your phone in the garbage. Throw it in the garbage.
I know that you even went to the hospital or to his home to cut his hair
at the hospital, right? Just a couple of weeks before he passed.
I mean, that's true friendship. I mean,
and he was doing great. I really.
Sure. He fought so hard. He really fought so hard, and it meant a lot to him to have a friend, and he was a true friend.
He was a really good guy. We even spent time in Florida together with my family. We were out on the boats, and one day he was trying to boots my brother up onto the boat out of the water. He said his thumb slipped up his butt. I almost drowned. I mean, just one thing after another. It was just a wonderful relationship I had with him. It was we worked on MTV together. We dug holes in ditches and in the dark, getting bit by mosquitoes. Mosquitoes were bigger than They were like the size of rats
And
under the Triborough Bridge.
any moment with Vinny was a potentially unforgettable moment.
Unbelievable. Yeah, and always up, never down. He had a good beat. He walked, he walked to his own beat. He was amazing guy.
His shorts came down here.
Now,
Sometimes we barbecue on Elizabeth Street outside the door in the summer, and I mean, he can get women to do anything. He's amazing. He had a talent.
he did. He did, and he was never malicious about it at all.
No.
You know,
all clean fun.
Everything
all good.
was in good fun and
in order.
You could tell
nothing out of.
In the end, if he was pushing you, it was because he liked you.
Nothing out of place.
You know, and Monsignor Sakano.
Yeah.
Now, Vinny sometimes, might not have had the greatest relationship with the church, especially as a child.
I wouldn't have known that. Oh, no, he was thrown out of schools,
Thrown
yes.
out of various schools.
He wore that he was proud of that, actually.
And, of course, in his last part of his life, he was stricken with a very debilitating and painful and ultimately deadly disease.
No.
But he never lost his faith. What was the spiritual message and the spiritual mission of Vinny Vella?
Well, to me, when you have a bad hair day, or you live in we all do. Oh, you indeed. But we all live in a harsh culture today, where the civility is a minimum, and then there's Vinny. And, whenever I think of him as a personality that was just enduring and more than cheerful. I think you asked about his spirituality. I think there was a ladder that came down the day he died, and God said, you need to cheer things up here. So from time to time, I just wonder what's going on up there, with him, because there wasn't anywhere he wouldn't go where you wouldn't smile. I smiled at his wake. I've never been in his presence where I wasn't smiling or laughing. So there I was praying and casket and Vinny's earthly remains, but I couldn't help laughing and smiling. Man just brought that out, of you,
Absolutely.
and I visited him a few days before he died. I had a meal with Margaret and himself in his home, and of course I had him retell the story about his stealing a King Tut's ring. Now, if you don't know that story, and I'm not going to belabor it here because there's a lot of other people want to speak, but it's the most priceless story ever. And I hope that I'm not telling tales out of school, but he stole King Tut's ring out of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Right, and he's not sorry.
Now, you mentioned you had a meal with Vinny and Margaret.
Yeah.
Now, you would have to admit, even if Vinny's in a better place, he does not have a better cook.
No, this is true. This is true. Right.
Potatoes and eggs, best.
I always had the feeling I was in the presence of someone who was saintly, and I know others would think there's a contradiction there, but because of the parts he played, but the man was just genuine.
He was.
And when you're in the presence of someone as genuine as that, it's holy. That's what it is.
And he was very interested in religion, and not just he encouraged people to pursue.
We were
whatever
instant
religion
friends.
they were.
We were instant friends, and I think that's partly why, because he was attracted to the.
Despite his early
maybe because
shenanigans.
of it. Maybe because of it.
It could be.
Yeah.
I just add to that Vinny's humor and the way. I mean, I was going through something, and same time at the end of his life, and he was caring about me more than himself.
Exactly.
He kept calling me, Tony, you say your prayers, this and that. And I said, yeah, man, I'm praying for you too. And he says, yeah, I'm praying. And it's like, he's just an up guy.
Absolutely.
The best.
David, you knew Vinny the longest here. And you could probably have your own show just talking about the life of Vinny. Now, you knew him before he did movies, before he did any of that.
Vinny was a great man, and when I was about 10 years old, my older brother grabbed me and he says, come with me, and we went to Mount Lavetta, which was a home in Staten Island for wayward children, and I was 10, and I went there and I spent a great afternoon with Vinny, his good friend Eugene, that he's now in heaven with, and my brother, and we hung out. and I had a great day. But when I left, up until even a couple of months ago, I told Vinny that it was so weird for me all these years that when I left, why did we have to leave Vinny there? Because, you know, that's my boy. And why, to quote Vinny, you're my boy. But it just, you know, I just couldn't believe that I had to leave him there. But he was a character and a great guy and always put a laugh on me. And he always says, like he says, who's got it better than you? And I'm going to miss him. And I love him very much. And I hope his family has, you know, the prayers to take care. Thank you.
Artie, now you,
Well, you know,
you always got a big kick out of Vinny.
Oh, it was. Yeah, excuse my voice. I just got over a cold. But what you saw with Vinny, what you saw was what you got. You know, he was never trying to be anybody else. And I mean, he was certainly, we said, unique. He was a classic. And some people don't realize it, but he was a great stand-up comedian. I without offending him, at one time I said, because I saw him, he was at the Duplex, I think it was, and he was doing the stand-up. I said, taking nothing away from your acting ability, Vinny. You should go on the road and be a stand-up comic. I said, all you got to do is just put a few things on the floor of the stage, you know, maybe 5 things to give you a hint as to what to tell stories about, from when you're in, like, you know, kindergarten to high school to, excuse me, reform school, or wherever, and you'll have the place hysterical. And it was great. He was terrific. I don't know if you saw him there, you guys, but
yeah, I did many times.
I mean, he's just a classic. He'd go into one story after another.
I wasn't a bad kid. I was just a little mischievous. So when I went to school, I went to a Catholic school in a village, Our Lady of Pompeii.
Oh, get out of here.
There you go.
I went there.
You went there too?
I went there.
Well, they kicked the shit out of me. I know about you. But anyway, my teacher sent us all down to the auditorium to take a school year picture. Now, it wasn't a group shot. It was individual shots. So I got online, took the picture. Got off the line, put off my jacket or put it on my jacket, and took another picture this way. So when the photographer came a month later, he said, hey, Sister Beatrice, here are the picture of your 50 students. She goes, 50 students? I only have 49. He says, you might have 49 now, but in here you got 50. She goes, listen to me. I've had 49 for the past 3 years. I believe you, but in here you got 50. She goes, it's impossible. So when you look at the picture, you see, I'm in 2 spots over there. I'm up at the top and I'm on the bottom. Now, I'm gonna go a little forward, then I'm gonna come back to this picture. You see, I was robbing parking meters when I was a kid because they were easy to open. So I had 2 pillowcases filled with dimes. So on the corner of 6th Avenue, well, not on the corner, but on 6th Avenue, West 3rd Street, there was a place called Delvy's. They sold leather jackets. So I went in the store and I said, how much is that leather jacket? It goes $49.95. I said, how many dimes is it? $49.95. Guy said, listen to me, 10 dimes to $1. Go home and figure it out. So the next day I came back with $50 in dimes. So the word was out on the street. Vinny Vella's buying stuff with dimes. So now I had that school picture hanging up right near my apartment door. So when they come in, you know, into my house, the picture was right there. All of a sudden I'm home. I was ready to go out. Heard a knock on the door. My mother and father were next door, my neighbor's house. And I opened up the door. And my mother would have ratted me out in a heartbeat. So when I opened up the door, I realized they were cops. I said, Vinny, get up against. Where's your mother and father? They went to Brooklyn. They went to go visit my aunt and uncle. I said, but I'm not Vinny. What do you mean you're not Vinny? I said, you're talking about my twin. I'm Frank. What are you talking about, Frank? So I showed him the picture. I said, you see this, Vinny? There's Frank. So the cops were looking. I said, oh, my God, it's fucking 2 of them. I said, what do you do now? He always gives my mother and father a lot of trouble. He was robbing parking meters. I said, well, he just left. He's with his friend Eugene. He just went to McDougal Street. And when you get him, lock him up. He always gives my mother and father a lot of trouble. So about 4 hours later, they had me by the collar. I told the cops, I'm Frank. The cops said, shut the fuck, you know. So they brought me home. They knocked on the door. They said, Mrs. Vella, who is he, Vinny or Frank? Vinny or Frank? He's a Vinny. Where's his twin? Twin? If I would have had the 2 of him, I would have killed the 2 of them. He showed us the picture. Don't mind him. He's a fuck up in the head. He'd make a trouble for everybody. So I got thrown out of school.
We did a few films together, and he was he was humble, and I'd call him as much as I could, and towards the end, of course, we talked a lot. And he was always saying, how you doing, my boy? You know, he refers to you as my boy. How you doing, my boy?
That's right.
Yeah, and And he'd say, you know, I pray for me. I said, absolutely, Vinny. You know, I'm going to get choked up just saying this, but he was a real. You're just not going to find another guy like him. You know, terrific guy.
Now, Dennis, I would always try and pick Vinny's brain about growing up on Bleecker Street in the '60s. I would want to talk to him about Bob Dylan and things like that. But instead, the conversation always came back to doo-wop music. That's all he wanted to talk about. Right. No matter, whenever the subject was music, that's all he wanted to talk about. And I know that he actually even booked your group for a reunion for one of the schools he was thrown out of.
Already upon pay.
Yeah. No, nobody else does that. So,
and he also did stand-up that night too.
Oh, okay,
yeah, he was on a roll. He was on a roll that night. Oh yeah, he did great.
Tell us about Vinny's love of music.
First of all, I've known Vinny about 10 years, not as much as most of the panel here, but I feel like I've known him forever. You know, to me, he's like a family member. I would just like be sitting in my kitchen having a cup of coffee. He would call me up. He'd say, "How's my boy, Dennis? How's my boy?" Just like that. He says, "I want you on my next show." I said, "Fine." You know, when I did the first show for him, I was doing solo, and I did 2 shows for him, and then a couple of years later, I joined the group, the Chimes. You know, the known group after Lenny Coco died. He put me on with the Chimes, and now with the Acchords. And he had such a great heart, a funny man, and so sincere. And he had the right to tell it like it is. You know, that's Vinny.
But he had a great knowledge of that music. Too.
Oh, he had every song I did. When I did the solo, he knew who the artist was, what year it was, and it was. I didn't even know what year the songs were doing. He knew it ahead of my.
I mean, that was a real love for him.
Oh yes, yeah. The doo-wop was his passion.
We all used to sing when we were younger, and Vinny, he used to work all the places, and the Gold Bug, which was on 3rd Street, and then he used to work at the Tony Pastor's, which was on 3rd Street, but that was always his thing, Vinny. You know, he loved the music. He liked the up-and-coming, the folky, which I was involved with, but he never... When I went and visited him a couple of months ago, he had the stereo in the house so loud, and he's doing dance moves and you know, he's doing the Vinny, to be quite honest. But he loved that music.
He loved the Acchords.
He loved the Acchords.
He did. JT.
Yeah. Oh, microphone.
You know, I know you spoke to Vinny, you know, all the time, and you know, one of the things about him that I think was kind of overlooked was his generosity in the arts world, because he was very, very welcoming to up-and-coming people and people just starting out. And I know
absolutely. Well,
helped,
you know,
help provide him with a lot of new talent for his show.
Yes, I did. I mean, Vinny has been a godsend. I mean, there's so many people that have been in the industry that Vinny had helped out. I remember sitting at Frankie Ferrara's, and we were just hanging out. And I forgot we were filming some movie, and this guy came up and started talking about a TV show, and Vinny goes, "I should have my own show. I could do better than him." And then next thing you know, a week, 2 later, Vinny calls me up and he says, "I'm going to start my own TV show. What do you think?" He goes, "I need co-hosts. Can you get me co-hosts?" And I said, "Yeah, what do you need?" Next thing you know, we put out a big casting call. I sent a whole bunch of my clients down and friends. And next thing you know, the Vinny Vella show was born. And there's many times, I mean, myself, I've done over 20 films with myself and Vinny in it. And the one thing about Vinny, he didn't care who you are. You could be a celebrity. You could be a bum on the street. You could be working in a grocery store, whatever. It didn't matter. Vinny treated you the same. He didn't play favorites, and he always supported charities, and he cared about everybody.
One of the last roles she did was the casino. So I finally had her commenting on the language by that point, which was a written part for Vince Vella. But the improvisation was, I said, "Mom, every time he says that F word, you tell him, watch his language."
I write it all down in this book. Every fucking nickel goes down right here. Receipts here. I'm sorry. Receipts here, bills here. Everything's here.
Since when do you talk like that?
I'm sorry.
There's a lot of
Nance gives
people
me
here.
trouble, and I'll tell him, screw around with those suitcases, and I'll take the eyes out of his freaking head.
Again.
I didn't curse, I said freaking head.
That's enough.
I'm sorry. You know we can't even go into the accountant to watch our money? Could you believe this cowboy bullshit? And sure, he's got his people in there. But how do you know? They could all be in on it together, those miserable fucks. I'll find out, and if it's Green himself, I'll bury that bastard. I've never trusted him. And you know, I got eyes behind my head. They trust that scumbag. I don't. Right now, the way I feel, I'll hit the two of them in the head with a fucking shovel. Mom, I'm sorry. They're beating me up tonight. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm all upset.
I know, but that's enough.
You know what they're doing to me.
I
Well, I
know,
can't take
I know
this
it.
no more. Back and forth, back and forth.
Take it easy.
All right. But
You get a heart attack like
I'm
that.
too upset right now.
It was so much fun because we kept their stuff for the last week of shooting, and we had fun with him and my mother. We kept it for the last day. And my mother, you know, she'd get a little, sometimes 2 cameras going. She didn't know when we were shooting or not. But he was very good. You see, he keeps incorporating her into the improvisation.
Also,
You know?
it's with your mother, it's
My mother was
usually
improv, but he had speeches. So she would interrupt the speeches, and he had to then pick up where he was in his energy.
Yeah,
it was
which
very
was
hard.
a little difficult for
Yeah, I
me
know.
because Marty
It's
would
very
say
hard.
to me, while you're doing your dialogue, she's going to interrupt you.
Yeah.
And while she interrupts you, turn around and politely say something. So
Yeah,
then
Mom.
remember where you left off
And jump
pick
right
up. And I said, oh, God, I'm going to have a jam. I'm in a jam. Good luck, but I did it.
Came off great.
We did about 40 takes, but we got it.
I mean, I'm still devastated from what happened. And, you know, his family, you know, Margaret Ann and everybody, they put in so much effort and everything, and they were so positive. Let's give another round of applause for Margaret Ann and the family. And going to that, you know, going to the wake and seeing him like that, I could just see him, you know, making all those comments and everything. I mean, he was one of the best guys in the world. I mean, this guy always helped people, and he never cared about himself. He always cared about everyone else.
Yeah, can I just say something? He would always say, he would finish, I would always hang up with him, and he goes, I just want you to be a big star so you could tell people you know me. And I'll never forget that, because he really meant it. He really did want the best for people.
Yeah, and he sometimes gave the impression that he was a tough guy walking down the street, but he was a teddy bear.
He was a sweetheart.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
he was, and he loved, you know, he was always giving compliments to the ladies. You know, that was his thing.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't matter how old you were, but it's a lovely dress you have on, Mrs. Calandra, whatever the name was.
He would knock on the door of everyone in his building every day and do it.
Yeah.
And the story, he was a great storyteller, especially when the lottery thing, you know, that whole lottery story.
Right,
My
right,
God.
right. He won the
thought it was
lottery.
a 7 and it was a...
Where he announces to the neighborhood that he won the lottery. He's going around
Tell that
with the
story,
ticket.
Father. Tell
well,
that
no,
story.
well, he won the lottery. He was going around. I don't know how much he thought he won.
$5 million.
$5 million. Okay.
I remember that.
Right. And it turned out that there was a mistake in the right. He went to court, right, and he appealed it, and they gave him $25. But it made a great story. But you know, for those of you in the TV audience that would like to know him better, there is a documentary. There's a film called Hey Vinny.
Yep.
By a filmmaker, Paul Stone, that is, I don't even know how to describe it. It's
The
just,
rings in there.
the ring stories in there. It's a wonderful story, but there's a moment, if I can get serious for a second, that, you know, his truancy, you know, all of his boyhood, you know, was getting in trouble, and he was brought to this home, Mount Loretto in Staten Island, and left there. And in this film, he describes it. It is the most stunning thing you will ever see.
Yep.
You know, Vinny telling the story, right?
Yeah.
And that was a little glimpse of a man.
They returned to the site when he
Yes.
told the story.
That's right. And he tells us this story, and you can see how this man, you know, not only craved love as every human being does, but then he knew how to confer it, how to transmit love, and that was his life, is living out that.
He loved kids. He's always, every time I spoke to him on the phone, he says, Nico giving you a lot of kisses? My grandson, he's not. I says, yeah, he kisses me. Sometimes he's bad. He says, you got to kiss him a lot.
Yeah. So unlike a lot of people in life who are damaged or they have negative experiences, he turned that inside out and did the opposite. He did the opposite, and that was his magic, right? Absolutely.
Hi, my name is Richard Speziale, and together with Scott Skolnick and directors Phil DeJean, Medjamed, and Johnny Sands, we've produced many episodes of the Vinny Vella Show right here from this studio. Now, also from this studio, I host a show. It's a live show. It's a call-in show. One night, I'm doing my show. I hear this voice on the phone. Hey, Richard, it's me, Vinny. Vinny calls in, so I got to introduce him to my audience, right? So a phrase pops into my head. And I said, hey, everybody, it's raconteur, bon vivant, and man about town, Vinny Vella. So I thought about that phrase, raconteur, somebody who enjoys a good verbal exchange. Bon vivant, a man who enjoys the finer things in life. Man about town, everybody knew Vinny, from my friends on the Lower East Side to the guy in the White House. So if I had to sum up Vinny Vella in 3 words, raconteur, bon vivant, man about town, Vinny Vella.
There's one movie that Artie, Tony, and Vinny were all in that I don't think ever gets enough credit, and that's Find Me Guilty.
Oh, yeah, we were in that, yeah.
When Vinny fell asleep.
No.
Oh, it's on IMDb. Oh, I didn't know you. It is,
You
yeah.
know somebody.
No.
Okay,
I was casted.
That's what
No, I was casted, and I had a character. And unfortunately, I got very sick, and I couldn't do it. But
My name was Joe Bellini.
But that was a great movie.
That movie, deserved more credit.
Absolutely, that was a fantastic movie that nobody talks about.
I got a lot of nicknames.
Joe Bellini was an artist, a great famous painter.
Do you remember the story with Find Me Guilty when Vinny fell asleep? He was on set. The director who Vinny introduced me to, actually, I hung out with, and he was telling me all these stories with Find Me Guilty, and Vinny fell asleep on set. And they kept it in the scene. They said, Vinny goes,
good.
Yeah.
What about the guy that he really fell off the bed?
Yeah. The Monopoly guy.
Yeah, he was in the stretcher. We brought him in. We carried the bed over the thing.
Yep.
And then me and Vinny were playing with the shoes back and forth, trying to put his shoes on.
That was a long
We did
time ago.
a wacky comedy, Tony, myself, and Vinny, called Damn You Rollin' Ruby. Remember that?
Oh, my God. I remember that.
I mean, hysterical.
Oh, my
it was just
God.
hysterical. We laughed and laughed and laughed.
We couldn't even work. It was so funny.
And then there was a scene where he was in the back seat of a car, and he had a few lines, but I don't know. He was just, I don't want to learn these lines. So we taped it to the back of the seat of the front, the front of the seat. So he would just read his lines off the back of the seat of the car, and we're trying to memorize what we had
Did
to
a Marlon Brando.
Yeah, he did it. Yeah, he did a Marlon Brando. But it's just so much fun being around a guy. He's just a fun person.
Oh, yeah.
And, that's the sad part. He was just a fun guy.
Vinny always took the
we need
best,
more guys
he
like
made
him,
best situation out of everything.
No, Vinny always called me every day, hey, my boy, I love you, your brother Bobby, I'll never forget. The neighborhood, the West Side, we were West Siders, and just a sweetheart. I'm going to miss, my phone don't ring, it ain't Vinny.
Now, David.
Yes, sir.
As Vinny began to, get famous beyond the neighborhood, what was that? What was that like?
I know Vinny from before he ever did any movies, and he was a grand guy, and he was a heck of an actor. I really dug all his acting, and he was a natural. He liked people, and I could see him just like reading the lines once and getting it done, even though I don't know nothing about the business, but I could see him going, not doing it all the time, rehearsing. Do it, know what it is, and then get on with it. But we were very proud of Vinny, very proud.
Did you ever hang out with him in the motorhomes?
Oh yes, when
he was driving the motorhome.
Yes, I think he had Brooke Shield was in the thing one time, and I even says he had a book of all these people that he drove around. But I even knew, I says, Vinny, you could do this. Not that he listened to me. A year later, he got his card, and he became an actor.
Remember the story about the monkey Bobo? The monkey in the trailer?
I'd like to hear it again.
Oh my
It
God!
was in the trailer.
Was throwing things at him.
Yeah,
and he
Vinny
turned around.
I can't believe that. That was excellent.
I can hear that story a million times.
Yeah, that's a
I
good
laugh
one.
every time.
Do you remember it, Tony?
Yeah, I can't do it like him. I mean, I don't know.
Give us the condensed version.
He was slapping Vinny in the head, and Vinny would turn around, the monkey go like this. I mean, it just...
Artie, do you remember the time that we went to that opening of the stationery store?
Oh, Perry's.
In New Jersey? And Vinny would borrowed his price thing, to put prices on his own pictures.
Yeah, it was a stationery, just a little. It was just
prices on his pictures.
It was just.
When I was in the hospital with him, he had all his headshots up. He was giving them out to the guy.
It was funny.
I don't need that.
It was a stationery store, like
he
a
made
little.
the the guy that was like the therapy guy, the physical therapy. I don't need physical therapy. He's doing good. He's giving out headshots. He's signing autographs.
There was a stationery store, like a little paper store up in suburban New Jersey. And,
opening.
And yeah, it was like, Vinny made it seem like it was going to be like the grand opening of some big thing. So I was there with him, and he puts the table outside, you know, and he had pictures from like 1950, I think. He had like $5 for this one, $8 for that one.
But he had the thing that he took the guy from the stationery store, his price tool.
Yeah.
And
the thing that you mark the items with, you know, for how much money they cost. He was using the guy's thing and said, "Oh man."
That was a fun day.
And then the people would come over and they say, "Wait, I'm Vinny Vella." He'd say, you know, but yeah, he's one of these guys that you couldn't imitate him. You know, like he was so unique. Like some people could imitate other actors or other. You just couldn't. You can't imitate him. He's just he was his own guy.
He loved his scalp brush. He loved when he used to make me, Tony, brush my scalp, brush it. I used to have to brush it like that, really hard. Then he would I would finish his hand. He'd get this little pinky. Give me the Vaseline. Just like a little dab of Vaseline. That's years ago. Everybody used Vaseline. He still did. And he would go like that, and he'd go. And that was it. He finished it off. Unique guy. There's only one Vinny Vella. Never be another one. Never.
Monsignor, did you ever go through the San Gennaro feast with Vinny?
He was one of the characters, the landscape of Mulberry Street had characters in it.
Absolutely.
Many of the gentlemen here, in fact, all of them got a characters, except myself. But
you're a character.
I didn't think so. But anyway, he was a prime character of Mulberry. Epitomized the neighborhood.
I went through that a few times, walking through the San Gennaro feast with him, and you would start at Canal Street at noon, and you'd be maybe midnight till you got to the end of it. You know, till you got to Grand Street or something. It would be midnight because he would be stopped, and the people who would stop him the most, believe it or not, were the cops to take pictures with him.
Oh yeah.
And it would be every 2 seconds. I mean, he was really loved, and he was very accommodating to anyone who wanted to take a picture with him or an autograph. He would give them his phone number.
Yeah.
You know, he had people calling him up. 7 years later, hey, do you remember me? You know, we took a picture in Mulberry Street in 1985. You know, he used to tell a story where. Somebody called him up. Yeah, we took a picture together in Mulberry Street in 1985. Don't you remember? And then he would say, then they said, "Oh, listen, we're having a barbecue in Long Island. We'd love for you to come." And he'd say, "Oh, okay, that's great." And they would give him Long Island Railroad directions. And he'd hang up on them.
He just recently, not too long, he did a job in Nebraska, I think it was, right?
No, Idaho.
Iowa.
Iowa.
He called me up. Matt, can you imagine? You all know Vinny Vella. Vinny Vella in Iowa. And he said on the phone, he said, all I see is corn. There's corn all over the place. Corn. I said, you're in Iowa. Where do you think you are in New York? He said, only wanted the corn. He said, but the people.
The people had those teeth in them.
Yeah. It was so funny telling the story.
He didn't like the Italian food.
No. He said, I said, how's the calamari in Iowa?
He didn't even know what it was.
But he would make fun. He wasn't making fun of people. It was just.
Right.
He
loved people.
Yeah, it was so funny.
Everybody that greeted him had teeth missing.
He said,
Did you hear about the time when I booked him in Texas? I booked him in Texas, and my friend was opening up a restaurant. So he calls me from he calls me up on the airport, and he says, all right, they're picking me up with a limo, and I'm all set. So all these Mexicans show up, and they're allowed to carry guns there. And they all showed up, and he calls me up, and he goes, are you trying to get me whacked? He goes, you got all these guys, all these Mexicans. And what do you call it? They took him in, they took care of him, they paid him, he had a great time. But it was the opening of a restaurant, and the guns were props, actually, except for the security that was there. But he made it like a whole different thing. But he made the best of everything. And then when they were trying to find Vinny, they couldn't find him because he was supposed to go on stage. He was next door at the other restaurant because he got the restaurants confused.
You know, before I forget, Dennis, I'd just like you to introduce the whole group.
The whole group?
For the Acchords, yeah.
Yeah, well, me, of course, myself. Tommy Mcmanus, the big guy, the Joker, he's the founder of the group, by the way. And Phil Zazima, Warren Tesoro, and myself.
Great job. And we hope you guys will do one more for us before it's over.
Of course.
Terrific.
We'll do one more. Sure.
Now, you've been on the show about 5 times. What were some of your
At least
experiences?
5. Well, Vinny had asked me to come on the show when I did the solo, and he says, you know, give me a CD with some of the songs. I sent him a CD, and he wanted to pick out the songs. And he picked out, of course, the doo-wops, you know. Mm-hmm. And we lined up about 7 or 8 songs, you know, for 2 shows. And he was singing along with me, and he knew all the words, he knew the artist, the year. It was amazing. He said, I gotta have you back, I have you back. So he did have me back about a year after that.
Nice.
And he picked out another 7 or 8 songs, and I did that. And the year after that, I joined the Chimes, and they made the hit record Once in a While, and I'm in the Mood for Love. I became the lead singer when Lenny Colgott passed away. It was 2015. And of course, we did the hits of the Chimes, and we did some other songs, and he loved them. He was in awe. And then I made a business move when I joined the Acchords, and when he found that, he called me. He was, oh my God, I have you here with the Acchords, and we did 2 shows for him. So we did about 5 or 6 shows I was on for Vinny Vella, and every show it was terrific. It was a pleasure to be on.
Absolutely.
I will surely miss him. Let me tell you.
I mean, he loved the music.
Loved the music. Loved it.
He loved life. He loved
life.
He loved everything.
He loved life.
He also
was full of,
never talked bad about anything.
No.
It's gone too soon.
We should also mention to the audience that he had a special love for you, Scott.
Oh.
Yeah, let's give it up.
Really. I mean, you were really his boy, and I know you respected each other tremendously. And you're going to miss him, I know that.
You know, he did a lot for me. I mean, I never, ever saw myself doing anything like this. But he, you know, he really forced it on me, you know, and said one time he couldn't make it, and he said, listen, you have to do the show. Show's got to go on, my boy. Goodbye, click, you know.
Click.
And that was it. He just threw me out there, and, you know, we did the show, and thankfully, Olivia was there with me, and we got through it, and it was fun. In fact, I think Nana, who's in the audience, was on that show, and so I got very, very lucky to have you know, 2 people there supporting me, and I had to do it a few more times, really, unfortunately, because you know, I'd much rather would have had Vinny to be healthy and to do the show himself, but. You know, I have to quickly tell you the story how I became his so-called producer. I was at the show because I live in this neighborhood, so of course I would go to every show, and you know, we were good friends anyway for about 15 years. And about 8 years ago, I was at the show, and Vinny mentioned a few political figures that he felt should be lined up and shot. And after it was over, I said, "Listen, you know, you can't say that. You know, you could be arrested for that. Those are like terroristic threats. You can't do it." And then we went in the back with Rich, and he said, "Is he telling the truth?" And Rich said, "Yeah, you know, we have to take that out. That's also against the policies of MNN." So Vinny said, "Okay, from now on, you're the producer." And I didn't think anything of it. But the next day, he called me up and said, "Listen." Schedule auditions for a new co-host, okay? And so I guess he's serious. And
rest is history.
Yeah, and then you know, I helped him book some of the guests and so forth, and it was you know, really a pleasure getting to know him and his family. And you know, he was always, he was a true friend. He wasn't a superficial friend. He would always, when my parents were still alive, he'd always, how's Mama and Dad and Papa doing, you know? And then my brother and his kids all the time, how, you know, how's your brother, how's the kids? And, you know, always, you know, he was a true friend that, yeah.
He was like that when we were young. He was just a sweetheart, always nice, and he just wanted to be loved.
Yeah.
He was a funny guy. And he got into little mischief things, but he was a misdemeanor. He wasn't like a felon or nothing like that. He just always got caught.
My mother loved him. He came down to Florida, spent some time down at my mother's house with us, with his wife, and she adored him.
He had a real affinity for older people, absolutely.
Yeah,
his facial was a whole thing. You could see his love. I mean, it was all in his face, you know. He never was down, hey, my boy. And this, I mean, I love him. I'm happy to say he's been my friend for that many years. I'm going to miss him. It hasn't really hit me. I think when my phone rings, it's Vinny.
Sure.
It ain't him, because he would call all the time.
You know, with baseball season coming, you know, he would call me during the game. I'm a Met fan, and he's a Yankee fan, but he would watch the Met games. And I would watch it streaming on my computer, just because the way my apartment's laid out, it's easier that way. So I was about 40 seconds behind. And, you know, they'd be in the middle of some situation still going on, and he would already see the outcome, but he would call me up, you know, and I would still have some hope. And he'd go, when are we getting rid of this guy? You know, when are we getting rid of this guy? You know, and I would know that he was going to strike out, or, you know, the Mets weren't going to score. And with baseball season starting, I don't know how I'm going to get through 162 games without him calling. And
you know, if there's a word that would personify his life, I think it would be happiness. He knew how to be happy, and he knew how to make other people happy.
And it was important to him that everyone be happy.
I just feel blessed that I was part of his arena of happiness.
He would sit on that porch at La Bella Ferrara for hours and hours and hours. And I used to say to him, I said, Vinny, you're like the sun. The world just revolves around you. He would love it. He would love the attention. And he told me when he did Kill the Irishman with Christopher Walken, and they were shooting in Detroit, they used to argue all the time because Christopher Walken wanted to sit in the back and Vinny wanted to sit in the front, because Christopher Walken didn't want to be bothered with all the fans, and Vinny was like, "What are you, crazy? What do you think we do this for?"
We did some work together, a magazine shoot we did one time, Vinny and I, and the photographer, she incorporated with this artist that actually did the mural in John's Pizzeria on 42nd Street, 44th Street.
I got you.
And she incorporated her photos into this mural, and Vinny and my photos are in this wall, in the paintings.
Still there.
Still there. They're like blue, like turquoise, and like real shocking colors. And that was for Detail magazine at the time. He got me that job.
That was a great movie that also didn't get a lot of attention.
No.
Kill the Irishman.
I don't even think it came out.
It came out. It came out.
In the theater?
Sure, it came in the theater. Yeah.
It's on Netflix.
Yeah.
I know it's on Netflix.
No, it came out in the theaters. Yeah, we.
I didn't go to the movie.
He had an opening at the what was it? The Sunshine? Is that what it was called?
When was that? Probably in the winter. Was it in the winter?
No, it was. It might have been the springtime. I think 2011.
Yeah.
You know, he packed the house there with his friends. Really.
Yep.
You know.
And isn't he in the last Scorsese movie?
Yes. Oh, that's right. We forgot to mention that. He's still going to have one more bite at the apple to see a Vinny on the screen this October. He was in Kill the Irishman and now The Irishman. It's very hard to keep track. He was in Analyze This, Analyze That, Kill the Irishman, The Irishman. But yeah, in October that comes out, and that's going to be a huge film. And it's going to be nice to see him on the screen
He's got
for
a nice
that
role
one last time. And he did a couple of scenes with Robert De Niro, he told me, who was a good friend of his, who actually was best man at his wedding to Margaret Ann.
You know, another thing, he would sit in Lamella's, in Lamella's restaurant, and he would sit against the wall So everybody that came in, you couldn't miss him. He would sit right there. And somebody maybe would recognize him and say, "Hey, Vinny, how are you?" And he had a little trouble hearing at times, right? So he had that smile. He had that big grin on his face. So he says, "Hi, how are you?" And then he whispers, "Oh, yeah, who is that? Who is that?" so I would give him the name of the girl. He said, "Oh, Marie, yeah, Marie, I remember you. I forgot all about you. Oh, I'm so sorry. Where was it that we met?" And he goes on. He was a charmer. I mean, he was everything.
So I used to book Vinny at China Club, and a lot of people didn't see a lot of celebrities, at these clubs. This is when I first started, and people used to come from miles around just to see him. Remember Sal Searchy used to come down and all that. And
what happened to that guy?
Sal's doing good. And I remember that Vinny used to sit in one corner, and there'd be a line. Do you remember? There would be a line all around just to meet him. And Vinny treated everyone equal, and he made sure he went and said hello to each and every person. I remember when I booked him until 11 o'clock, he stayed till 12:30 because he wanted to finish the whole line. That's the type of guy Vinny is.
Yeah.
Let's give Vinny a round of applause. And when Scott called me up, and the only thing I want to clear up, which is only 2 seconds, is that if anybody hears any rumors or any stories or everything, it was his idea. He's the one who came and called us up, and that's it.
Well, I appreciate that, but this show would be nothing without this panel, and I'm very, very grateful.
We're happy to be
to
here.
all of you for being here, and I know what all of you meant to Vinny. And believe me, we could have had a panel of 100, with Vinny, and I apologize to anybody out there who may have felt excluded or whatever. That was never my intention. I just wanted to put together a mix of people from different areas of Vinny's life to put something together that his grandchildren and maybe great-grandchildren could look at down the road to really understand the kind of impact that Vinny Vella made on all kinds of people. And that was my intention. And I'm very, very grateful to everybody here for
as we are
sharing your stories. The Acchords, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
I want to meet you here today. There's just so many things to say. Please don't stop me till I'm through. This is something I hate to do. We've been meeting here so long. I guess what we've done was wrong. Please, darling, don't you cry. Let's just kiss and say goodbye. Many months have passed us by. I'm gonna miss you. I'm gonna miss you. I can't lie. I'm gonna miss you. I've got ties, and so do you. I'm gonna miss you. I guess this is the thing to do. It's gonna hurt me, I can't lie. Maybe you'll meet another night. Understand me, won't you try? and say goodbye. It's gonna hurt me, I can't lie. Maybe you'll meet another guy. Understand me, won't you try? Let's just kiss and say goodbye. I'm gonna miss you, I can't lie. I'm gonna miss you. Please, darling, don't you cry. I'm gonna miss you. Let's just kiss and say goodbye.
Yeah, I need a table. So I says, gotta make a reservation. Do you have a reservation? He goes, no. He said, it's for Frank. I said, doesn't matter who it's for. If you don't have a reservation, I can't help you. He said, listen to me. You want me to get you fired? No, you're gonna get me fired. You didn't make a reservation. I can't help you. He says, listen, it's for Frank Sinatra. I says, I'm so sorry, listen to me. You didn't say Frank Sinatra, you just said Frank. I got a table for you right now. I'll give you that table right in the front. He goes, I don't like that table. I want that table. I said, there's people sitting on it. He says, tell them you made a mistake and move them over. And they come in and they stop right in front of me. And Frank Sinatra wasn't a very tall guy, maybe about 5'7", something like that. With all these guys around him, they look like giants. And they stopped, and then he says, is this the guy? I said, that's it. He's gonna smack the shit out of me or something, you know? So he says, what's your name? I said, Vinny. He goes, here, thanks. And he gave me a $100 bill. Now, back in the early 60s, a $100 bill was a lot of money. So he went to his table, he sat down, and said, the least I could do is buy the table a drink. And they were drinking wine, but he was drinking Jack Daniels. That was his drink. So all of a sudden, a guy gets up, he comes over, he says, come on, join us for a drink. I said, I can't do it, I'm working. He says, join us for a drink. I said, I'll be right there, you know. So I sat down, and I said, you know, if Jilly comes in, I'm gonna get in trouble. Yeah, you're gonna get in no trouble. And all of a sudden, Jilly comes in, I'm trying to get up, the guy pushes me back down. So Jilly said, don't worry, Vinny, don't worry, just say, relax. So after, you know, the whole thing was over with, I bought them a drink. He said, you didn't have to do that. I said, that's all. But Jilly didn't charge me. He said, because they ain't paying anyway. So on the way out, he looked at me, he goes, hey, Benny, here. Benny. I didn't say anything, but he gave me another $100. I figured, I don't give a fuck. I'm here 2 hours. He gave me $200. He could call me Susan if he wants. I don't give a fuck.